wrong raping woman, influencing young ones to kill a boy now. He ain't no bad man, boy now. He ain't no bad man. A real bad man works so whatever he wants, and he don't need no gun, he full of joy now. That is a bad man soldier. He ain't no bad man. So sit down, rock back. Tell them I don't need no strap to defend my people from wicked and evil. Whoa. So sit down, rock back. Big man look for a walk. You're too damn evil. If they distress my people, then fire go burn them. Fire go burn them. Whoa. Oh Lord, I said this is the year for love. Fire go burn them. Fire go burn them. Whoa. Say little boy, you ain't bad at all. No. Tell me what they're fighting for. What they killing for. We don't need no war now. So tell me what they're fighting for. What they killing for. We don't need no war now. What they're fighting for. What they're killing for. No. What they're fighting for. What they're killing for. No. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Blood in my eyes, oh woman, you make me cry. Never you hurt me, never you tell no lies. You are the woman of my dreams, girl. Don't even know what you say to me. Girl, I wanna spend my life with you. No matter how busy, I'll make time for you. Say through thick and thin, man, I write for you. And if it's loving what you want, you get that from too. Girl, I love you for you. You never pressure me. Girl, I swear you were sent for me. And I was good without you. What you made me, you better me. Is you give me the melodies. Girl, I could take all my royalties. Cause you have been dancing away. No one dancing away. Your love just makes me feel like just dancing away. You have been dancing away. This thing just makes me feel like I'm ready, I'm ready, yeah. I'm ready, I'm ready, yeah. I'm ready, oh yeah, yeah. I'm your guide if ever you lose your sight. I'm your life if ever you need mine. You are the woman of my dreams, girl. Baby, I love you forever, yeah. Girl, I wanna give my time to you. Every morning I will vibe with you. Healthy conversations, about life with you. I wanna spend everything, every time with you. But you tell me now, you say build apartments and no buy no car. You say invest in rest, build an empire. And when I don't give back to who need it more, girl, I love you just for that, yeah. You have been dancing away. No one dancing away. Your love just makes me feel like just dancing away. You have been dancing away. This thing just makes me feel like I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, yeah. I'm ready, I'm ready, yeah. I'm ready.
peace anywhere you come from. Coulda up, you coulda down. Blessings on my nation. Ooh, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. This city can't hold me. My vibe's too high, and my heart it told me jump right now. You will touch the sky. Feel my love unfolding like a laughing flame. All who did not know me when not done, they gon' know the name. Million people coming down, dancing to a song. Love is life and life is love. Blessings from above. Can you feel the love that's in the air? Well, if you feel it, let me hear you say, dancing, moving, moving everywhere. If you feel it, let me hear you say, na 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 na, eh na 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 na. Take me to the river, take me to the sea. Wash over me music, bathe me in your melody. We are such a blessed tribe, sweeter than a million bees. People live 1,000 lives and never feel this free. Million people coming down, dancing to a song. Love is life and life is love. Blessings from above. Can you feel the love that's in the air? Well, if you feel it, let me hear you say, dancing, moving, moving everywhere. If you feel it, let me hear you say, na 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 na, eh na 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 na. Na 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 na, eh na 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 na. Can you feel the love that's in the air?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Those who have joined us on Zoom and our online audience. My name is Roshana Ramdas, founder and project lead for the Not on My Watch initiative towards prevention and solidarity, and your host for this evening's event. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to this panel discussion on bystander intervention and gender-based violence. And I'd like to thank every one of you for taking the time to attend this event. I will now hand you over to our other project lead and founder, Mrs. Antoinette Robertson-Brosco, to give a brief overview of the project.
Good evening, everyone. At some point in our lives, we encounter or witness instances of interpersonal violence. The decision to act can be difficult, as there are many times when one may wonder whether to intervene or stay out of people's business or mind your business. A recent survey we conducted indicated that 61% of the respondents witnessed a form of gender-based violence. 74% indicated that they know someone who was a perpetrator of abuse, and 78% who said that they know someone who was a victim of abuse. This intervention program is meant to engage bystanders to increase community awareness of the scourge of violence in our society and galvanize everyone to be more actively involved in interrupting gender-based violence. Bystanders should recognize warning signs and risk of violence, know how to respond safely, refer persons to available support services, and report matters of violence. The Not on My Watch initiative is a micro project under the patronage of the Spotlight Initiative and Trinidad Youth Council, meant to eliminate violence against women and girls. It is therefore our intention through this project to raise awareness and educate individuals on the importance of the bystander effect and how it impacts social problems, especially gender-based and sexual violence, to provide individuals with the understanding of why a bystander intervention program is necessary for reducing gender violence, and also to develop a curriculum for training bystanders to detect and deter gender-based and sexual violence. We want persons to know what options they have to speak up, interrupt abuse and violence with people they know and with strangers, to demonstrate the importance of men as our allies, to improve media literacy and provide an understanding of the role of media in establishing and maintaining or redefining social norms. This evening's panel discussions form part of a series of activities under this initiative over the next few days. Tomorrow and Wednesday, we will host a two-day workshop on bystander intervention. We will place the registration link in the chat and hope that you take the opportunity to join these workshops. I really want to take the opportunity to thank the team that has worked tirelessly in putting the program together. Roshana Ramdas, Carrie Diet, Chanel Anushka Jarrell, Shania Ali, Torinda Williams, Devi Ramnarayan, and of course, mention must be made of our mentor, Ashley Burnett. Thank you everyone for your participation, whether on Zoom or via Facebook, and I look forward to this evening's discussion. Back to you, Roshana.
Thank you so much for that overview, Antoinette. So before we begin, I would like to give a gentle reminder that there will be a question and answer segment in the last 20 minutes of the session. Therefore, I kindly ask everyone to either type their questions in the chat or use the raise hand option. We have also placed in the chat the registration link for the workshops that are carded for tomorrow and Wednesday. I would now like to take this time to introduce the moderator for tonight's event and our very own team member, Carrie Diet. But before I hand it over to Carrie, I would really like to introduce our expert panelists for tonight's discussion. So firstly, we have Mrs. Megan King-Cadett-Emesiani of the Rape Crisis Society. She's the holder of a BSc in Psychology from the University of the Southern Caribbean and Master of Science in Mediation from the University of the West Indies. Her area of research is divorce and its effects on the family dynamics of Trinidad and Tobago. Megan has been trained in the field of social work, sexual and gender-based violence, restorative justice and juvenile justice, grief and bereavement counseling, building resilience in children, intermittent explosive disorder, and non-suicidal self-injury. At the Rape Crisis Society, Megan functions as the course director and outreach officer. Secondly, we have Mr. Kevin Liverpool from the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Domestic Violence. He is a social development practitioner working with men and boys to transform masculinities and promote gender equality. He is the administrator of the Caribbean Male Action Network and serves as a board member of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Kevin is also an Atlantic Fellow for Social and Economic Equity at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Next, we have Mrs. Valerie Mohammed Metivier from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. With a passion to serve people, her journey to becoming a social worker started as a college student, where she volunteered at homes for the aged and children's homes. Valerie is a graduate of the University of the West Indies in a BSc in social work with a double minor in human resource management and psychology, and has obtained certification in counseling psychology and a trained meditator. Throughout her career, Valerie has been working with at-risk children at their families to provide solutions aimed at rehabilitation and family reunification. Valerie is currently the manager of the emergency response team at the Children's Authority, which she has worked for the past 7 years. And lastly, we have Mrs. Claire Guy-Alleyne from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. She's the acting woman superintendent of police in charge of the gender-based violence unit and the child protection unit within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which was launched in January 2020. She has 26 years service from the TTPS and is also the holder of a Bachelor's of Law degree from the University of London. She was also a deemed fingerprint and crime scene expert in the Port of Spain High Court, receiving training and certificate in evidence-based policing from Cambridge University and investigating gender-based violence from the NYPD. She is also the holder of a certificate in law enforcement and leadership from ELEA in El Salvador. She's a qualified TTPS police prosecutor and has prosecuted in several police matters before several magistrate courts in Trinidad. As a police officer, she is very passionate about her job and she performs the same with diligence and dedication. She enjoys being of service to the people and will continue to provide the same with highest of integrity and commitment. So with that being said, I am really excited and looking forward to these discussions. So Carrie, back to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining with us. I really must say it really is a privilege to be with you all this evening. And we have a really exciting, packed session. We hope to be as interactive as possible. Let me say a quick good evening again to our panelists. We have Miss Megan King-Cadett, who is the Outreach Officer for the Rape Crisis Society of Trinidad and Tobago. We also have Mr. Kevin Liverpool, Director for the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Executive Director for CARIMAN, Ms. Valerie Mohammed Metivier from Children's Authority, and Ms. Claire Guy-Alleyne, the Women Superintendent of Police in the Office of the Gender-Based Violence of Children, Child Protection Unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The 10-year-old son of Sherry-Ann Huggins, who was chopped to death, tried to defend his mother against her attacker. This took place in September 2020. Keston Knights, also 24 years old, was shot dead in 2017 after intervening to assist a woman known to him. This evening, in an attempt to stand in solidarity with these bystanders, we intend to have an engaging conversation and look for innovative ways in how we can change the narrative and also put an end to domestic violence at large. Firstly, let me just give you the layout of our evening's festivities. Firstly, we're going to start with Ms. Megan King, who will just give us the framework and the legislation of things put in place to protect the victims and the survivors of rape. And she'll also give us the overview of the Rape Crisis Society. And we will go on to after the person that's representing the Children's Authority, which would be Ms. Mohammed, and then we'll go to Mr. Liverpool, and then we'll end off with Ms. Claire Guy-Alleyne. So, Ms. King-Cadett, I turn over to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for inviting the Rape Crisis Society to this much needed panel. I must say greetings to my fellow esteemed panelists and to our viewers joining us on Zoom and Facebook. Thank you and good evening. I am delighted that we are here to talk about bystander intervention, or how I like to call it, constructive observation. Yes, it is because of this constructive observation that give birth to the Rape Crisis Society, and I'll tell you how. A few decades ago, the issue of sexual abuse has been sworn in secrecy. Victims were beaten and blamed and scorned for such acts, and they were abandoned by their family members because of rape. And so it was unheard of until in 1984, a small group of professionals ranging from social workers, police officers, and prison officers, they came together and formulated what was then known as the Rape Crisis Committee. Yes, so they offered a hotline service to victims of domestic violence as well as sexual violence. Over the years, as we gained momentum, we were known as the Rape Crisis Center. Today, we are the Rape Crisis Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and we believe that all individuals have the capacity to cope and to thrive with whatever issue they may be experiencing at this time. They can reach out and seek professional assistance and also family support. Yes, so at the Rape Crisis Society, we deliver programs for the public to create awareness on the reality of rape, domestic violence, incest, and all forms of sexual and physical abuse. We offer counseling, we offer a hotline service, both for our nationals as well as the migrant community. Yes, we offer outreach initiatives and other support services for survivors, their families, as well as perpetrators. The Rape Crisis Society has a two-pronged approach in keeping with our mission statement. which is both curative and preventative in nature. Since our inauguration, we have been a catalyst for effectively lobbying for the protection of rights of women and girls. This subsequently led to the passing of the Sexual Offences Act in 1986 and the Domestic Violence Act in 1999. And even now, even today, Rape Crisis continues to be an advocate for the passing of new legislation, particularly the Sexual Offences Act amended 2019 and the passing of the bill in 2021, which has been in the making for 10 years as it relates to the National Sex Offenders Registry. So some legislation that we can look forward to is the managing of the National Sex Offenders Registry website by the Commissioner of Police. Yes, some things that we can also look forward to is the accused being medically examined with or without their consent. And so compensation will be given to the survivor if they have contracted an STI. We can also look forward to the offender reporting to police station, if they have been discharged from prisons or a psychiatric hospital, or if they were even deported. The sex offender should also notify the police of a change in address. And so those are a few snippets that we can look forward to. Attorney General Faris Alwari also proposed 2 registers, one, of course, for private use for law enforcement, and also one for the public, of course, under the control of the Commissioner of Police. So, Carrie, when you talk about protection of survivors of sexual violence, those are some things that we can look forward to, of course, but in the meantime, persons who experience this trauma in their life, it's a lifelong challenge. And so when you mention the framework, it's really a step-by-step process towards the rehabilitation and also the protection of survivors. And so for adults, we encourage persons who are over the age of 18 to report the incident as soon as possible, more so within that 72-hour time bracket in which the crime took place. Yes, in cases of children, of course, it is mandated by law to report all instances of child abuse, be it physical or sexual. I know my colleague from Children's Authority will speak more about it. Thereafter, the medical examination, which will be in the accompaniment of the TTPS, is inclusive of court proceedings. And at this juncture, we at Rape Crisis Society strongly advise that persons seek counseling, yes, from Rape Crisis, but there are other counseling agencies available. So those are some of the things that we can look forward to, as well as protective measures that are in place for our survivors.
Is that it? Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you said, Ms. Cadet. I hope that so far we are receiving the information and we understand everything that we're trying to do today. Being a bystander means that even if when we see something, we say something, and we have to learn to be the voice, and we are advocating for the voice of those persons that would have gone through these experiences to prevent and also be the voice even after, if they had to go through that and they survived it. We want to be that voice for them. And speaking about being the voice, I'm about to bring on Miss Valerie Mohammed Metivier from the Children's Authority. And why we asked for a representative from this unit is because many children go through different things and have different experiences. They would have seen and been exposed to things, and they don't really know what exactly they are supposed to do things that they're supposed to, and how they're supposed to handle it. And we really want to find out what is the role of the Child Protection Act and what is the process, how to report the abuse of a child mechanism, how to report the abuse of a child mechanisms, and if they are available to do so. Ms. Mohammed?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for allowing the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago to have a voice in this discussion today. It's my privilege to represent the organization. I would first give a brief overview of the Children's Authority's role, which would include our mandate, our powers and function, some noted trends, a little bit about the Children's Act of 2012, and also the mechanism to report and by which we receive reports to start with. So the Trinidad and Tobago ratify many international conventions and consensus documents together with promoting the rights of children, including the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989. Consistent with these principles, a package of children legislation was developed in 2000 with the Children's Authority at its center. On May 18, 2015, several key pieces of legislation were proclaimed, giving the power to the Children's Authority to begin delivering its mandate, which is to provide care, protection, and rehabilitate children, who are at risk, who have been victims of abuse or neglect. So coming with that legislation, we actually received some powers and function. One of the functions that my colleague spoke about is receiving reports. So we receive reports, we investigate reports. Now, to receive reports, these come through our registry department, and it can be done via telephone, via email, or by walk-in. We also receive reports from other organizations, and we have particular forms that are actually done to do so. The investigation of the reports received are done by different units. We have the investigation intervention units. We have a North team, a South team, which covers South, Southwest, East-West, the entire Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad. We also assess children. We also have in Tobago, our Children's Authority, we have a branch in Tobago also, which actually is modeled to the unit that we have in Trinidad also. We assess children by our assessment center. We have, right now we have 4 assessment centers that's fully equipped with our psychologists, doctors, where we do medical and psychological evaluation, forensic interview, forensic medical, and we work very closely with our stakeholders, the Child Protection Unit, and also gender-based violence unit. Right now we have 4 centers. We have one in Sandy Grande, one at Mount Hope, one at the Madahamri Assessment Center, one at the Sugarwanas Assessment Center. We also manage the foster care and the adoption system. We have the license and monitoring unit, which actually monitor and license the community residents, and we provide support for the youth justice system. This unit is called the Child Justice Units, and they work out with the court, and we actually support our colleagues at the court, the probation officers. We support them in that aspect. Let me just talk about some of the noted trends. Now, you would recognize that the authority is actually here like about 6 years, and we have been receiving on average 4,000 to 5,000 cases per year. We also have recognized there's an increase of children presenting with mental health and behavioral issues, challenges. We also recognize that sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect the most reported types of abuse. Females are actually most victims of sexual abuse, sexual and physical abuse, while males are more often victims of neglect. The The perpetrators are most times, 99.5% of the times, unknown to the children. And we also recognize that children actually still receive harsh punishment and humiliation under the guise of discipline. And it's still very prevalent. Example, recently we had a case where a child's head was shaved and sent to school, shaved with a razor, it was, and when sent to school, so colleagues could laugh at her. And that was considered to be a form of discipline for something that she would have actually done. Let me share a little bit about the Children's Act of 2012. So the definition of a child is actually anyone under the age of 18. And according to section 22(1)(a) of the Children's Authority Act, chapter 46(10), a child in need of care and protection is any child who has neither parent nor guardian who is fit to exercise care and guardianship, is lost or have been abandoned and remains abandoned by his parents or guardian. Whose parent or guardian is prevented by reason of mental or bodily disease, being infirm or incapacity, or any other circumstances that provide them from upbringing, and there is no available person willing or able to care for this child. So that child becomes a child of interest based on the Section 22 Act, under which the authorities gets our mandate. It goes on to talk about children who are exposed to moral danger is a child in need of supervision in accordance to Section 50A of the Children's Act. A child who is ill-treated or neglected in a manner likely to cause him suffering or injury is also a child, in need of care and protection. If a child is found begging or receiving alms, is found loitering for the purpose of begging or receiving alms, if a child is in the company of known criminal, if a child frequents the company of any common or reputed prostitute, not being the child's mother, is also considered to be a child in need of care and protection. The mechanism to receive reports, so we have a hotline 996. We also have a toll-free number 800-2014. So the calls are coming. We have a standardized reporting form by which we receive our information. We also have a credible and robust mechanism which allows for reports to be made easily tracked, and we can actually do statistics. Let me just, right, so if somebody's going to make a report, what is required to make a report? So generally, general information of the child in need of care and protection. We'd also like to know some details of the incident, being reported, and that will be able to say to us, is this a report that we need to respond to immediately? Because you also have an investigation unit. We have a unit called the Emergency Response Unit, of which I'm the manager. We work 24 hours every day, right? 24 hours, and we respond to those cases that are considered to be emergency. We also need to get some details of the suspected offender, particularly if the offender is in the home. And we'll also like the reporter contact, but the reporter, that is optional. We don't have to give a contact number. You can actually make a report anonymously. So that's basically an overview of the authority. And I was asked a particular question. Should I go into answering the question now? No, okay then, thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Mohammed Metivier. And again, even Ms. King-Cadett-Emesiani, we really appreciate all the information that you all have been giving us so far. And we're about to hear from Mr. Kevin Liverpool. He will give us information regarding the challenges in ending domestic violence and what are the benefits or the positives of the amendments to the Domestic Violence Act. Mr. Liverpool.
Thank you very much, Kerry, and good night to everyone. I congratulate the host and event organizers for such an important event. I bring greetings on behalf of the President of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Roberta Clark, as well as the General Manager, Sabrina Maula-Bash, and the rest of our board, staff, and members. So a bit on the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The Coalition is a non-profit organization with charitable status. It was formed in 1988 by Diana Mahabir Wyatt. And her vision was to bring together persons and organizations working to eradicate domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence. Today, the coalition provides several services, including counseling, legal advice, and referral for further protection. In 2019, the coalition, as part of its work, came together with other organizations to form the Alliance for State Action to End Gender-Based Violence. And this group leads in advocacy at the state level for improvements on the Domestic Violence Act. As Megan mentioned, the act was amended in 1999 and then again in 2020. And this year, the Domestic Violence Act turned 30 on the 16th of August. We have the longest Domestic Violence Act in the English-speaking Caribbean. And over that 30 years, we have seen approximately 120,000 persons apply for protection order. And we know based on the news that we see that sometimes, even though people receive these protection orders, there can still be very negative and even fatal outcomes. So what is important is for us all, and especially at the coalition, to know that we don't just start at A and then get to B and the work is done, but it requires constant advocacy and constant fighting on the front line to end such a scourge as domestic violence. In the 2020 amendment of the Domestic Violence Act, we saw some improvements, such as the expansion of what is considered domestic, to include various relationships. However, what is notable, despite the expansion, is that there is not an explicit protection for persons in same-sex relationships. So that is something that requires further advocacy and work on the front line. Additionally, the law now mandates that police officers, and I know Claire Guy-Alleyne will share more on it, that police officers must report and must provide a receipt and must investigate cases of domestic violence, which is crucial in ending this issue in society. I will just summarize by saying that in order for us to really address it, we really need everyone. So we need civil society, we need law enforcement, we need the policymakers, and we need the general public as well to stand in solidarity and for us to, at one level, change social norms, but at the other level, as this event centers, to speak out against cases of violence and harm that we see. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Liverpool, for that information. And now we turn over to Miss Claire Guy-Alleyne, Woman Superintendent of Police from the Gender-Based Violence and Child Protection Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, to share an overview of what they have been doing so far.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Commissioner of Police and the Executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I must say thank you for inviting us to this forum. This conversation is a conversation that we must have. Domestic violence long ago was seen as a private matter. It was seen as something that happens behind closed doors. But the thing is, things that happen behind closed doors can lead to death. And the thing about it is that in order to get rid or rid society of this ugly scourge in society, as was rightly said by my friend before, we must have that sort of multi-sectorial approach. So I want to tell the organizers of this event this afternoon, thank you, and I want to commend you as well. Now, the Gender-Based Violence Unit within the TTPS was launched by the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, in January of 2020. The Commissioner and his executive saw that time as the right time in which to form that unit within the organization. And whatever time, very excellent time. Now, this unit consists of officers who are highly trained on matters of investigating gender-based violence. The unit operates with a robust case management system where, as a report is made, the entire process is explained to the survivor. And it is important because when we have survivors coming to the police to make reports, survivors are very confused. It is difficult for a survivor to even get up and pick up the phone or go to a police station to make a report. That is a difficult step. So we commend persons who come forward and make reports. We also commend bystanders because we have a lot of bystanders who make reports to the police and we investigate the report. We have instances where bystanders would report to the police, and when we investigate the matter, the survivor or the victim, for a number of reasons, may deny that they are in a domestic violence relationship. And that's, I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay. I say that to say bystanders should not be turned off from reporting domestic violence. We encourage persons to continue to make your reports. When that survivor develops enough strength, because when the report is made, we have within the TTPS where the victim or the survivor is referred, even the family are referred to the TTPS Victim and Witness Support Unit for that psychosocial support. Sometimes we have survivors who do not want to cooperate with the investigation. And after that intervention with the victim and witness support, even the Rape Crisis Society sometimes assist us, even Families in Action, because we have recognized within the TTPS, we cannot do it alone. We cannot. We need all hands on deck. And sometime after this intervention, the survivor is ready to cooperate with the process. And we as the police officers are able to develop a case in order to take before the courts so that the perpetrator can be prosecuted before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Because in order to take a matter before the court, you must be able to prove that matter beyond a reasonable doubt. So from the time the report is made, the investigative process commences. We try to obtain statements, we obtain medicals, we visit the scene, we retrieve weapons, you know, we speak to witnesses to obtain witness statements as well, because the more evidence we have, the better the case will be made out before the courts. Now, the Gender-Based Violence Unit, there are 9 policing divisions within Trinidad and Tobago. And the Gender-Based Violence Unit is represented in each one of these divisions. We are not at each police station. We are represented within the 9 police divisions. And that is how the TTPS operates with their specialist units. Specialist officers are not assigned to every station, but the representation is there. And once you make your report, matters will be referred to the gender-based. A gender-based violence officer is detailed, and the matter will be investigated by that officer, right? There are different ways that reports can be made to the police service and then referred to the gender-based. For example, I am asking everyone on the platform this afternoon to download the TTPS app. It is free. It is a free app available to both B-Mobile and Digicel subscribers. Download the app. The app also has a feature, a SOS feature that can be activated in cases of emergency. So it is a very useful app to be downloaded. You can make a report via the 999 once it's an emergency. If it's something you're a survivor who you're now developing the courage to make the report, if it's not an emergency, you can sit in the comfort of your home, on your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop, and you can type out the report and you can send it to the TTPS online reporting as well. We have the TTPS social media. We have any police station within Trinidad and Tobago. We also have the 555-800 tips. You can just make your report. You can make it to a police officer on the street. You can walk into any police station. You can call any police station. So I am advocating and begging persons, do not stay in domestic violence situation in silence. Make reports, let it be investigated, and let us go forward. Perpetrators need to be held accountable in order for us to rid this country of this ugly scourge. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Claire Guy-Alleyne. And before we enter into our question and answer segment for the panelists, one of the things that really stood out that I've observed throughout tonight's proceedings is the importance of the village. And the village doesn't really necessarily represent the community per se only, but we have had rape crisis, we've had Children's Authority, Coalition Against Domestic Violence, we have the police service, we have Families in Action that would have been mentioned by Ms. Claire Guy-Alleyne. This is the village that we need and we need to get back to. It's not minding my business. We need more persons to take that active role in speaking up and saying something, being that change that is needed to invoke the change against and the fight against domestic violence. So as we are about to get into our more active part of today's proceedings, this evening's proceedings, we're going to ask different questions and they're going to be posed to the various panelists as they apply. So our first question is directed to the Rape Crisis Association, Rape Crisis Society. Ms. King-Cadett, we know that rape crisis provides intervention for rape victims. But what can families who are bystanders most of the time do to intervene when they are knowledgeable about a member of their family being a victim of rape? And what steps can be taken? And what role culture when it comes to that hush-hush thing about families keeping things a secret, what role does that play in the rape crisis that exists? And what are some ways forward? And how can we as a society move forward in ending rape and ending that is not my business talk? I'm not said a lot.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to take it part by part. Yeah. So let me see if I can remember the first part of the question. What services does Rape Crisis provide? The type of intervention for, you mentioned, victims. We at Rape Crisis Society, we see someone who has been abused as a survivor because they have lived to see another day, to cope, to thrive, to overcome their circumstances. And so we see them as survivors, of champions of their own right. Yes, and so we also, when we talk about family members, knowing of the incidents that have taken place or is taking place, we should also note that family members are suffering too. Yes, that they are affected as well to a great extent, be it financially, psychologically, emotionally. They have trauma, they have PTSD too. They suffer loss of love, of trust, security, and they have to deal with that battle of trying to keep it a secret. Should I say something? If I say something, they try to deliberate what will happen to my sister or what will happen to my brother. Is very common in some situations where the perpetrator is the head of the home. And so there is a lot of deliberation or contemplation as to whether they should speak out because they will risk losing food. Something as basic as food. Yes. So when they are sworn to secrecy, who are they protecting? Yeah. Should it be the perpetrator? Should it be the survivor? And to be quite frank, both require assistance. Yes. And so we encourage that if a family member knows that abuse is taking place, the first step, even if you feel as though you don't want to report right now, just because, and what if, and what if, and what if, and the whole host of what ifs start to populate your brain, yes? The first step we want to encourage is to find out more information, yes? Access the appropriate channels. We have the TTPS app. We have websites all over the place. We have CADV. We have Rape Crisis. We have Children's Authority, who has a wealth of information on their website as well. Yes, so find the appropriate means of information to get help, call a hotline, and of course, we highly encourage to report it. In instances where the abuse is ongoing, you can disrupt it. Yeah. As a bystander, you can intervene by disrupting the event before it takes place or if it's taking place. And what do I mean by that? It can be a temporary thing until better can be done. So let's say, for example, I am at home and my little 5-year-old sister is home too doing her homework, and I know Uncle John reaches home by 3 o'clock every afternoon, and he goes and interferes with my little sister. So I could say, Shelly, let's go over by Auntie now. Let's go over the road by Auntie. Yes. So whether or not we have the power, we think we don't have the power, there's the little things that we can do that can eventually build up, that can prevent violence from happening. Yes. You can also, as a family member, support the survivor. Offer help in any way. Do you need me to call somebody? Do you need me to tell somebody? Yes. Do you need me to hide your documents in cases of intimate partner violence? Do you need me to hide your passport and your birth paper and important documents in case you need to run? Yes. Offer support in the littlest ways as possible. And of course, I have to reiterate, reporting can be done anonymously. Most of the reasons why people don't report situations is because they think they're going to get caught, or how are going to look, or, if Suzanne find out that I tell on she husband, she will never forgive me. There's a whole host of what they call diffusion of responsibility, yes, that takes place in the bystander effect. And so there are a host of avenues and options that are available. Carrie, you mentioned the hush-hush thing in families, keeping it a secret. And truth and in fact is that this is not a today thing. This did not happen overnight. In the Caribbean, the crime of rape is sadly supported by various socio-cultural norms, attitudes, myths, and practices. And so this includes sexual harassment of women in the streets, objectification of women in the media. And so when we look at rape, and I invite everyone to join in on our training session tomorrow, rape is a male violence act directed to women, yet emphasis is given to the type of dress worn or the time of day or night when the crime occurred. This places responsibility for the attack on the victim or the survivor. And it's mostly women, you know. So rape is a crime that causes trauma and the crisis that disrupts the life of the survivor. And we can only imagine. You live in your life, normal, hunky-dory, going to work, and all of a sudden, the unfortunate happens. Can we only imagine for a second the effects of sexual violence on the victim? If it happened when, let's say in reference to if it happened when she was 6 years old, when she was 15 years old, and now she's in the workplace, and it happens when she's 21, can we only imagine for a second the burden that she has to bear for herself? Can we imagine the trauma that she has to replay night after night? And so the effects of that can be her being promiscuous. Yeah, have we ever thought about that for a second? That she's promiscuous because she has been abused repeatedly. Yes, and so the social practice of blaming women who have suffered these traumas, of course, adds to their burden. And when we as a culture don't do anything about it or don't speak up, it gets worse. Some of us may have this sense of responsibility that, you know, they want to help, but unfortunately, they don't really understand the situation, or they don't think, well, this is right or this is wrong. Yeah, because it's been happening for months, it's been happening for decades. It happened to my mom, it happened to my aunt. And so if it happened to me, well, it is what it is. Yes, and so the question that we all should ask ourselves is, would I rather be seen as someone who helps a person in need, or as a contributor or a partaker or a bystander? Yes, am I going to be the one taking photos, video recording when the abuse or the assault is taking place? Or am I going to laugh and say, well, it's good for she, or it's good for him, because he liked to play too much thing? You know, and we as Trinbagonians, we sometimes have a lot of opinions, yes? And so we at Rape Crisis, we every single day, we take that step forward to change the narrative. Yes, through our outreach initiatives. Applied knowledge is power. Someone who knows the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships, or someone who knows the signs of financial abuse. Yes, financial abuse is someone taking your money just to exert power over you. That is abuse. And just knowing these little few things can really help guide someone in the event that they need assistance. And it really starts from the home, teaching our kids, you know, to report if they feel they don't feel too confident about what Mr. Smith said, or Mr. Smith kind of touched me kind of way, but I don't really feel too good about it. Yes. Really enforcing and empowering our children to tell a teacher, tell a family member that they trust, or even a friend who can protect them in the long run. Yes, also to mention, Carrie, the bystander effect speaks to us allowing our children to view pornography. Yes, over-sexualizing our children. This needs to stop. This needs to stop. We ought to realize that there are consequences to our actions. And when the mark boss, as we say in our colloquial terms, we want to hold our head on ball. But truth and fact is, we as the adults, we as the responsible ones, don't just stand aside and allow it to happen. Yes. Carrie, what was the other part? What was in the other half of the question? If you could please remind me.
Just one quick thing, because you answered the majority.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways forward, and how can we as a society move towards ending rape and ending, towards ending rape.
Yeah. I would also add that we firstly should understand that our men fall victims as well. And so we ought to offer support to them when they reach out, because it takes so much courage for them to go to the step, to make that step, to say that they have been affected. And so we as a community, we as that village, as you made reference to, we as that village should honor that by giving them the support that they need and don't laugh at them. Yes, because men are victims of sexual violence too. Yes. Some of the steps that we can take, again, with reference to the home, that disaggregation of relationships. Again, going back to parents teaching their children okay touches and not okay touches. Friends being able to look out for each other. Yes, again, applying knowledge is power. If my girlfriend comes and she says, Frank do so and so last night, you think that's okay? You think that's okay in a relationship? As a friend, we should be able to say, Q, that is abuse, that is emotional abuse, that is psychological abuse. And we won't thought that in a textbook unless we studied it and we're trained for it. Yes, but the basic lay person in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have that information widespread. All right, we have to intentionally look for it. And so we should empower each other by finding out more information, by being that active bystander or that positive bystander. Also allowing fathers to be more observant. Yes, having more conversations about perpetrator intervention. Yes. Having conversations about perpetrator intervention. It is very, very common that they are victims themselves recovering or not. Yeah. And when we don't do anything, it becomes worse. When they don't access help, when they don't access support, they think, well, I was abused as a child and this is what I'm going to do my husband when I get a husband. Yes, this is a narrative that is going on in their minds. And so if you don't know that this help is available, then we won't receive help. Again, going back to the reporting aspect of it, just inviting everyone. If you have a thought, an inclination that abuse is taking place, report it in good faith. Be that constructive observer. Yes, be that one to say, oh gosh, if I don't do something, nothing will be done. And that is one of the effects of people not doing anything, or what you call the bystander effect. Studies would have shown worldwide that persons are less inclined to do something in the event of a crisis or a situation because they think, well, not me, but the other person is going to do it. And the more persons there are in the room, for instance, the less likely someone will ask for help. And that is a sad reality that we live with every day. So be that constructive observer, be the ideal bystander. And what can we say about that? Try to de-escalate the situation. Yes, if your friend and her boyfriend fighting. Yeah, let's just give a quick example. If your friend and a boyfriend fighting, try to avoid violence. Yes. Don't try to over antagonize the situation or refrain from antagonizing the situation. Ask for help for whomever else may be present. Know when to call or reach out for assistance. And again, I can't reiterate enough to report. Yes, so I hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Ms. King-Cadett-Emesiani, for all your wealth of knowledge. I mean, you really did answer. I know we posed you quite a lot of questions, and you really did answer all of them to the best of your ability. Quickly moving on, our next question is to the Children's Authority, that is Ms. Mohammed Metivier. How can families, people in the village, intervene when they know a child is being abused? And what are some of the challenges that have been faced in getting a child out of a home?
Okay, so, I was thinking about, and I heard you said that it takes a village to raise a child, and that ever old saying actually has a lot of value. It does take a village to raise a child. And if, in fact, how can a person make a report of a child having knowledge and want to make a report of a child being abused? As indicated before, reporting is actually mandated. And once a person or persons have knowledge of a child being abused, they are actually obligated to make a report. And if they don't, actually, they could be charged and be fined for that. So we have our hotline. We have our hotline, our 800 number, 800-2014 and our 996, where you can call our registry department. You can give a name if you choose to. You can actually make a fictitious name if you also wish to. You could ask, to please keep my information anonymous. I do not want anybody to know that actually I, in fact, did make this report. And we will actually honor that request. What they can also do is they can walk into any of our offices in the South, at the Mother Hamri Center, Shagwanas Assessment Center, at our head office on Dare Street, and our Sandy Grande Assessment Center, and somebody would take your information and would actually send it to the relevant department. If in fact, taking into consideration the bystander effect, if in fact that you are actually afraid to make a report for obvious reasons, you can actually, one way to overcome that effect, you can actually direct somebody to do it on your behalf. You can ask somebody to do it, and that may work, but it's important to make those reports, again, not because it's mandated and you actually will be breaking the law. We don't want to scare people into making reports. We want them to make the reports willingly and be very comfortable when they're actually going to make a report on a child or children being abused. So look at the other question. What are some of the challenges faced when removing a child from a home? First, before I even answer that question, I want the public to know that it is never easy removing a child from a home. It's a very traumatic experience for the child and also for the perpetrator, because you're taking a child from a familiar environment. It's home. It doesn't matter. I mean, a child and children, we have seen it over and over again, would be experiencing different types of abuse. And when you move that child from that home and you ask them, do you want to go back home? They would say yes, because that is home and that's where they're comfortable regardless of the abuse. One of the major challenges we face is actually persons not agreeing to allow us. Because when we go in and we conduct our investigation and we actually substantiate the report, and we have now to make that decision to receive this child or children into our care, we have a form that's called a permission to receive into care, whereby the staff who actually who have responded to this report would read the instructions, the information on the form, which clearly identifies under what section we're removing the child, the reason why, and we actually bring it down to layman's English so they could understand what we're saying, and explain to them also the process, what happens after we receive your child into care. We would ask the person to sign that document. They're within the right to refuse. If they do refuse, we just take a note and of the date, time, and actually a witness would actually sign that, and we'll have that as it put into the child's file. What we try to do most time is, if we have to move a child, and we only move a child if that child is critically injured, if we leave that child in that environment, that child is more likely to be abused again, what actually is being abused, and we really have to take that child into care. What we also do is try to place a child in a familiar environment with a relative, so at least, to minimize the trauma. Sometimes that is not possible. So we have to put the child into a foster care system or actually to a community residence. But as I said before, the major challenge is actually getting parents to agree for us to receive your child. And if it becomes very hostile, and it do sometimes come very hostile and aggressive, we actually seek the support of the district police, or we actually seek the support of the child protection unit. There are times that we actually go with the child protection unit, we go together, depends on the report received. And there are times we actually may leave and come back, or we may call while we're there and ask for some support. And that is understandable. I mean, nobody wants anybody to take their child off their home. Abuser would never say that he or she is an abuser. They actually see that there's the right to discipline their child based on their standard. So that is generally the challenges that we do face. Added to that, or there are times that persons will actually refuse to give us any documents. We also ask for the children immunization card, the birth certificate, because we want to continue life, continue school, make sure they get the medicals, make sure everything is okay with that particular child. We need that information. We don't ever get that. We don't ever get clothes. They will tell us, hey, you want them, you get clothes for them. But that is basically the major challenge. And as I said, once we face those challenges, we get good support by the relevant authority, be it the police station, the district, or the child protection unit. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mohammed Metivier, for your knowledge. It really is interesting hearing about the challenges as well as what can be done to assist children in need. Thank you so much. Now we turn to Mr. Liverpool. What role does the bystander play in ending domestic violence? And how can they respond to cases of domestic violence, from seeing it, intervening, and aftercare? Mr. Liverpool.
Thank you, Kerry. And at the introduction, Kerry, you would have cited 2 past incidents where bystanders would have lost their lives. And the reality is that intervening is a dangerous thing. So it is really important that people assess the level of risk before they make a decision on how they are going to respond, not on if they are going to respond. The reason why I say how is because bystander intervention is based on the idea that each one of us have this personal responsibility to promote peace and justice in society. And based on that personal responsibility, therefore, the onus is on us to act wherever we see a disruption of peace or wherever we see injustice. So we usually say there are 3 Ds in bystander intervention. And I mean, there are other acronyms, but tonight I will just talk about 3 Ds to make it easy for everyone. The first is directly. You can intervene directly if, when assessing the situation, assessing the risk, you assess your own power in the situation. You may be older or you may be in a position of authority. If when you assess those things, you feel safe enough to intervene, you can do so directly, and you can speak and use your words or get involved, as Megan said, non-violently to interrupt and stop what's happening. The other D is to delegate, and this involves finding someone who can come with you or making a report to somebody else who can take action. And I think that one is critical within the context of domestic violence that happens within communities. And it was mentioned before because oftentimes domestic violence, sexual abuse. These things are shrouded in secrecy within the communities, right? And people say, well, that is married people business, or I'm not getting involved in that, right? And another way is to distract. The other D is to distract, and that's if you're in public. You could, simple things like asking the person for the time or interrupting, pretending that you knew the person and say, sorry, I take you for somebody else. And just to allow a little break in the tension, right? So there are different strategies. I mean, the internet is rife with different strategies that people can try to distract and interrupt hurt and harm and violence that's happening in public. But the idea is that it is our responsibility as individuals to promote peace and justice. And I feel, Kerry, that on some level, we know what bystander intervention is. Because let's take an example. A street vendor is on the street where he's not supposed to be. And the police comes to remove him because he's not supposed to be there. What do people do? Nobody says, well, that's not my business. People take out their phones, they call people, they shout at the police, they say, oh, you're too wicked. They get involved, they intervene. So what we're saying is take that same energy. And when you see hurt, when the police not around, and when you see hurt and harm on strangers, apply that same energy, right? So I think we know what it means to interrupt. And that is what we are asking persons to do. I just want to add one more thing, and I want to dial back, because most of the times when we think of bystander intervention, we're thinking about these really violent conflicts that happen in public, and we're standing there with our mouths wide open and we don't know what to do. But I want to dial back a little bit, right? Children are very observant. And children, especially young children, have a very heightened sense of justice and fairness. I have 2 young ones, so I know. And oftentimes when children see things happening, we adults like to tell them, you know, mind your business. You know, that's not your business. Leave that alone. So from early, we begin to snuff out that sense of justice that children innately have. And then later on in life, we want to tell people, well, you know, when you see something, stand up, is your responsibility. So I think it's important that as we raise our children, we speak to them about justice and fairness, and we model that, right? We model it. Megan, when she shared, she was talking about the little things. And I think that is important in bystander intervention. There are many little things that happen around us. You may be in a WhatsApp group chat and people are sharing nude pics, and you may know that it is wrong, but you don't say anything, right? Those are little things. You may be within your home and your cousin says something, and it may be sexist or inappropriate, and you know it is wrong, but you don't say it. You may be at work and something may happen and somebody may make a joke about a woman or something like that. And you may know it wrong, you may feel uncomfortable, and you don't say anything. So it's important that we understand that silence is violence, because silence affirms a lot of these hurtful actions and speech and behavior. So it's important that we practice speaking out when we know something is wrong. There are many situations where we would not be at risk. Safe situations, we could say something. People would get upset with us. Some people might stop talking to us, but we won't end up like the cases you shared at the start, Kerry. And in those situations, it's important that we say something, because what we want to do is rebuild this sense of justice within ourselves, within our families, within our communities. And that's where bystander intervention is strong, where there is a strong sense of community justice, because that's what people do when they stand up against the police. It's all about justice, right? And I'm putting it in inverted commas. It's all about justice. So let's begin to start practicing this same justice within our day-to-day lives, within our relationships, on our WhatsApp groups, with younger people who look up to us. And gradually translate that to the bigger crimes, so to speak, and really don't stay silent, make a commitment to do something. Speak out, make a report, ask someone for help, read up on how to be a better bystander, but do something. Over to you, Kerry.
Thank you, Mr. Liverpool. Some really strong stuff. Silence is violence. Interrupted. My last question from this Q&A segment. We have another Q&A that will be taken from the audience. So we are seeing your questions, keep them coming. We'll see how quickly we can go through that. This goes out to the GBV unit of the TTPS, Ms. Claire Guy-Alleyne. What legislation is being implemented right now that can help reporting and intervening in gender-based violence easier? The amendments to the Domestic Violence Act, the Children's Protection Policy that speaks to intervening. Are people mandated to report if they know a child is being abused? Are we mandated to report if we know that something is actually happening? Ms. Alleyne?
Yes. Very, very excellent question. And I like what Kevin said. Silence is violence. I would like to add that silence is acknowledging and accepting bad behavior. We need to call people out, call people to action. Let persons understand that they have a responsibility, just as was said by Megan. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Yes, you see something happening, report it. Now, under the law, under the Domestic Violence Act, just as under the Children Act or the Sexual Offences Act, certain categories of persons are mandated to report. And if any suspicion of sexual abuse or physical abuse, they are mandated to report. We have persons who are medical practitioners, persons who have care and control of persons, persons who are in care of control of residents. These persons are mandated to report. The other persons that are not mentioned under the law, I am saying, do it because it's the right thing to do. Reporting violence is the right thing to do. I remember some time ago in the western side of Trinidad, there was a homicide, a domestic violence homicide, and you would hear neighbors saying, I used to hear the quarreling, I used to see him kicking and cuffing her up. You would hear persons saying that after the fact. That is a heavy thing to live with on your conscience. And one category of bystanders that I think that survivors need and they do not get 100% support is family and close friends. A lot of times you would hear family telling survivors, go back to your marriage. Go back, you have children with that man. He's the breadwinner, go back. And that is why it is important to have that multi-sectorial approach. We need more support for our survivors, be it male, females, children. We need more financial support for them. For example, when persons are able to handle themselves financially, they would cooperate with the investigations. A lot of times, what we have observed at the gender-based violence unit, one of the obstructions that we have and one of the hindrances is that support network for the survivor. The police, we are enforcers of the law. Yes? So when they come to us, we would encourage them to participate in the prosecutorial process. However, after that, life goes on. Yes, there are shelters, but we need more shelters. We need more financial support for our survivors. We need where survivors could be empowered to be on their own, because a lot of persons stay and remain silent in domestic relationship because of that lack of financial support. We need more family support as well. I have a victim, a survivor I was speaking to last week, and imagine her mother is telling her, you are not allowed. She took out a protection order. And the mother is saying to her, you are not allowed at my home anymore because your husband is allowed, and now you have a protection order against your husband. Your husband is my friend. When family members and close friends embody perpetrators, you make perpetrators feel as though they are doing nothing wrong. And that does not help the perpetrator. And it causes the victim to feel less of a person, especially when someone as a mother, close family, friend does that to them. So I'm asking persons, if you see something, say something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Allen. Do it because it is the right thing to do. We're going to take about 50 minutes to just entertain some of the questions and the comments within the chat. Some persons are asking some really good questions, and I will not be okay if I leave these questions unanswered. So we're going to start with this person asked, how do you identify an alleged who himself may have been a victim of rape? And what advice would you give in relation to a young adult, 18 years, who is now a parent living with within an abusive home with other relatives? Keeping in mind that both the young adults,
Was it Carrie? Seems to have some technical difficulties. Roshana?
Hi, yes, I will just jump in for the questions, right? So, okay, so for the first question is directed to the superintendent. Okay, so the question is directed to the superintendent. What is the biggest challenge encountered or observed at the community level? And is there a significant difference in terms of willingness to report or intervene in urban versus non-urban communities?
One of the biggest, just like I said before, one of the biggest challenges that we experience at the gender-based violence unit is where survivors do not want to cooperate with the investigation. In most instances, a survivor they're in love with the perpetrator. They are in love with the family member who is committing the violence. And really and truly, they just want the violence to stop. You know, so most times they come to the police, they would ask us, could you please talk with him? Could you please give him a warning? Instead of providing us with a statement, which is critical for us to take the matter before the court and charge the perpetrator. Without that statement, it is very difficult. As a matter of fact, without a statement, we cannot go forward to the courts with the matter. Right? And persons don't cooperate because from a mirage of, reasons why they do not cooperate. The person is the breadwinner at the home. the person is a narcissist at home, the survivor is afraid. There are many instances. So what we try to do at the gender-based violence unit or even the child protection unit is try to seek that support, that psychosocial support for the survivor in order to empower them to be able to move on. What was the other question?
Yes, so the other part of the question is there a significant difference in terms of willingness to report or intervene in urban communities as opposed to rural communities?
When it comes to the communities, the action is the same. Persons' action are the same because in all communities, as was said by Megan before, is that in the Caribbean, domestic violence, they don't see it as a serious crime. They see it as something private. And that is throughout Trinidad and Tobago. It doesn't matter if it's in the urban or it's in the rural. But what we need to do, sessions like these, where we are changing the narrative, and the narrative, we have to keep doing that, keep changing the narrative, keep having that conversation, keep empowering, because at the gender base as well, besides enforcing the law, we are involved in a large range of outreach programs. From the formation of the unit in January of 2020 to present, we have been through every community. We have been through a lot of schools. We have been through churches, NGO groups, where we are educating persons about the unit and domestic violence as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So the other question, and I think this goes out to all the panelists. What is the time period of reporting a rape? And in the context of, meaning if your friend tells you that they were raped, and what are the steps afterwards?
I think that question will be for me, Roshana.
Yeah.
We strongly advise that we report all instances of sexual abuse as soon as possible, ideally within the first 72 hours, particularly for the medical examination in terms of unwanted pregnancies, HIV, STIs, and so forth. However, if the incident happened 10 months ago, 2 years ago, you can still report it. If it happened 20 years ago, you can still report it, yes? But it is strongly encouraged as soon as possible, yeah?
Okay, thank you so much, Megan. Okay, so moving forward, this is a question to the superintendent. So this participant would like to know, can you speak briefly on the topic of applying for a licensed firearm for women for self-defense purposes?
Right. Well, it doesn't matter if you are a woman or a male. Once you see that need to protect yourself with a firearm, and you are a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, you can apply for a firearm user's license. The forms can be obtained at the Treasury, at the government Treasury, the Form 1 and the Form 16. You fill out the forms. You have someone who is going to be the declarant to the back of the form, whether it's a police officer, someone in society, will assist you in filling out that form, and you submit it to the station district or the firearms section. The firearms section would send the forms out to the police, the district that you reside, and the matter will be investigated. For example, you would have to do a medical, you would have to have recommendations as to your character, you would also have to do an eye test, you would also have to submit a certificate of character, because if you are convicted in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, you may be debarred from obtaining a firearm user's license. And what we also do, domestic violence victims or survivors, whenever they are making reports and the perpetrator is the holder of a FUL, it is critical that that information is passed on to the police, because you want to disarm that person or the possibility of that person using the firearm to commit further harm to the survivor as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And I believe this next question can also be directed to you, Superintendent. When can the general public be able to access a comprehensive online national sex offender registry?
Well, as soon as someone is placed on the registry, because what we have is the court has ordered that persons be placed on the registry. And I know the TTPS, the site has already been created, right? So once persons are placed, the public would have that access.
Okay, thank you so much. Megan, I believe this question can be directed towards you. How do you identify an alleged who himself may have been a victim of rape?
Can you repeat that, please, Roshana?
Sorry. How do you identify an alleged person himself who may have been a victim of rape?
Okay, so speaking to the perpetrator, how can we identify that they themselves have been
were victims of rape? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it can happen primarily through disclosure. Disclosure can be accidental or purposeful. It could happen within the home. They may just shout out, well, this happened to me, this is life, this is what it is. So it can be purposeful. Even in cases where they may have been arrested, disclosure can happen there, or even in a counseling setting, disclosure can happen there, or it could happen accidentally through their behavior, through the slip of the tongue or so. Yeah.
Okay. Another one I directed to you. What advice will you give in relation to a young adult, 18 years, who is now a parent living within an abusive home with other relatives, keeping in mind that both the young adult parents are deceased and has nowhere else to go and who is also unemployed?
Yeah.
That is the context for the situation.
Yeah. But firstly, my heart goes out to the person who is affected in that situation, having to deal with the death of both parents and being in an abusive environment as well. The first thing you want to ensure is your safety. Yes, safety is paramount at all times. You want to ensure your safety. And so is it that the person themselves is being abused or they witness the abuse taking place? In both instances, again, safety. So you want to ensure, again, going back to the little steps. So for example, you may be unable to leave because that's the only place of abode, that's your safe space. And again, because of COVID-19, we can't really move about as much as we can. And being a parent, I guess there's more restrictions as well. And so if the 18-year-old is the survivor of the abuse taking place, you want to ensure little steps within the home. Yes, if you are being abused, you want to ensure that you go to a safe space in the home. For example, let's say if your abuser is attacking you, you won't run in the kitchen where there are knives and potential weapons in the kitchen. You want to have little code words. You want to always have money on your phone just to call in case of an emergency. You want to have that support system, even if it's that one friend, that one friend who you can reach out to in the event that you need to run. Yeah. You also want to ensure that you have your personal documents in a plastic bag, a sealed plastic bag, your baby items. You want to ensure that your baby is safe in the event that you need to run and you need to maybe drop off the baby by their godmother, their godfather, or somebody in that event. And in cases where there's no one else available, there's Ms. Guy-Alleyne, there's Valerie, there's Kevin, there's myself, there's hotline numbers, there's the TTPS app, there's somebody who you can always call to get help. Yeah, you are never alone. You are never alone. Help doesn't always come from a family or a friend. It can come from us. Yes, so you are never alone.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Megan. I believe there's one.
If I could
add,
sure. If that particular parent at 18-year-old feels as though her child is being threatened also and may feel that the child is at risk, she can actually reach out to the Children's Authority. And we also have, the mother and child could move to a shelter in the interim. They also support system in that we have the social welfare. As a single parent, there are ways and means that she could probably obtain a grant, for herself and her child. And maybe that will probably be the start of, actually getting some type of intervention, together with counseling, being trained or retrained, but at least we need to start somewhere,
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm seeing one more question here in the chat. So, okay, so this is it. I have a relative whose son is verbally, emotionally abusive, as well as has pushed, butted, and thrown water at her. Recently, he cussed her out and threatened to kill her and burn their house down. As a bystander, how do I help her when she can't even get the phone answered at the courts?
You want me to take that?
Sure, anyone, it's any panelists.
Yes, make the reports. Make the reports and let the police investigate the reports.
Okay, great, no problem. So I believe this is all the questions. Does anyone else have any questions, any participants that they would like answered? Okay, I'm actually getting a question from Carrie, who unfortunately is having some technical difficulties getting back into the room, right? So his question is, what steps or advice would you give to an individual that is experiencing bystander paralysis and to assist them in the prevention of having this reaction? I believe anyone can answer this question.
I think the panelists are having some bystander. we're all waiting on each other to respond. I think that's what's happening there. But the first thing we have to accept is that it happens to all of us, yeah. Because the guilt associated with the bystander effect is also very real, and people could feel very guilty when the situation is over and they go home and they have a hard time on themselves, thinking they should have done something. So understanding that it is not unique to feel this way in a situation. It's not that something is wrong with you. But what I would really encourage people to do is really dig deep and really unearth that sense of justice. Because for me, that's where it begins. That commitment to making a change in the world, making a change in your community, making a change in your family, based on justice and equality and peace. So it's really looking deep within. For me, that's the first step, looking deep within and, building and reassessing your own values around justice.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so actually about 3 more questions came into the chat. So I'm going to read the first one. So this is directed to the superintendent. How can I contact you? I am a teacher and I would like to speak. I'm a teacher and I would like you to speak to my phone class briefly. So this person would like your contact information, Superintendent Claire.
And I would be happy to share my information. One of the things I want to add to what Kevin just said is that, be the bystander that you would like to have around. Sometimes we have to switch roles. Nobody wants to be a victim or a survivor, but I'm saying sometimes when we are making decisions or thinking about something, you be that bystander that you would have liked to meet, if you were in that victim or survivor's position, right? To the teacher that wants us to come and lecture to her students, you can send an email to GBVU secretariat@ttps.gov.tt. You can also contact us via the cell phone, via landline 628-6696. And we will be very happy to come and share.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, the other question, how does the authority manage concerns of gang violence and threat to children?
Could you repeat the last part of the question, please?
Sure. How does the authority manage concerns of gang violence and its threat to children?
Oh, okay. So as a matter of fact, only today we got a report actually alluding to some sort of gang violence. And what would happen there, because the authority we are not trained to actually go into some situation, because we don't have that, we are not police officers, and we are not trained to that sort of environment. We'd actually have to contact police officer, the child protection unit, who would also have to contact their, and Ms. Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the task force, because of the environment we may have to go into. And then we will go in there and conduct our investigation with the support of the police officers. Once we actually find that there are children in the environment who may have been, who could be influenced by some sort of gang violence or some sort of something in the environment. And we find, once we make a decision, or based on all the information received, if in fact those children actually at risk of becoming gang members themselves, or being hurt, or being actually at risk, they're at risk in that environment, we may have to make a decision to receive them into care, not necessarily to take them to one of our safe places or a children home, but to relocate to a relative, and actually start counseling, therapy, do assessment. It depends on what presents when we conduct the investigation.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think this is the second, I think there's just two more. This is a kind of lengthy one. So witnessing violence for the first time in a relationship, should the bystander make a report at that very moment, or should we see if it occurs another time? Most times victims say it's the first time it happened, he don't normally hit me, etc. Because sometimes as a bystander, we don't know what happened in the situation. We just say a blow to pass, and since we don't live in their homes, we don't have a time frame for how long this has been occurring.
Roshana, my advice to that bystander is that you may have only one opportunity, and this may be the opportunity to save that survivor or victim. Don't carry that on your chest at all. If you fail to report it, and the second time, the blow ends up fatal, because sometimes the roles are switched. The victim this time may be the perpetrator the next time. So my advice, report it and let that intervention take place by the authorities.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so the other question, also, should reports related to children be made to both the authority and the child protection unit?
Yes, actually, reports can be made to both units. What happens if we, in fact, if it's reported to the Children's Authority alone, and we would actually make a report to the Child Protection Unit, and if they receive reports, they actually make reports, share that report with us. So we have that collaboration, and that we work together. But it can make to both units.
Superintendent Claire, would you like to comment as well? I know you're about to say something.
That was exactly what Valerie said. I was going to endorse. So I endorse what she says.
Okay, great.
Yes, we work closely together.
All right, great. Okay, so I think one last question. How quick are the responses after reporting it and getting the persons arrested?
Right. No two reports are the same. We have had instances where reports are made and within hours, the perpetrator is arrested and taken to court the same day or the next day. So it depends on the trauma that is experienced by the survivor and how cooperative they are with the entire investigation. No two investigations are the same. Sometimes we have devices that may have to be analyzed before persons are arrested and charged. Sometimes we have to seek the guidance of the Director of Public Prosecution. So there's no time frame in which the perpetrator can be taken before the court. But what I can tell you, just as Kevin alluded to earlier, is that the law mandates that every report of domestic violence must be investigated by the police. And within the police service, we have where the report must be recorded and it must be investigated immediately. So immediately upon receipt of that report, the matter is investigated. Sometimes we have to even take the survivor or convey the survivor to a place of safety and have her being, she will be receiving psychosocial support, and then the investigation progresses. So no two survivors are the same.
Okay, great, no problem. So I believe that is all the questions from our participants. So I would, leave it up to the panelists. Are there any closing remarks you would like to have, to say before we close off?
I would just like to commend the Trinidad Youth Council on hosting this event. I think it's very inspirational when younger persons and the youth take these issues on their shoulder and really begin the hard work. So I'm really energized and encouraged by that, and congratulate the Trinidad Youth Council and all those involved in pulling this event together.
I would like to endorse Kevin's contribution as well, because a lot of time you would hear persons saying, the young persons this and the young people that. Your work that you are doing, it's noticed and it's appreciated and it's commendable. And I plead with you all to continue to do the excellent work that you all are doing by educating our public and empowering our survivors so that persons will, feel comfortable, they'll know where to go, and know what to expect whenever a report is made, how to reach out to the Rape Crisis Society, the services that are offered. And this is one of the positives of COVID. Because of COVID, we have the platform, and so many educational stuff takes place on these platforms. And I want to commend everybody. And I want to say also for us to encourage and be the bystander that you would want to meet. Let us say something if we see something. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I too would like to endorse what both speakers said there, but I would also like to remind the public that, we need to actually to get rid of the taboos and the beliefs and the hush-hush. We need to abuse, incest, those things are not, acceptable in our society anymore. We need to actually make it public, be directed, get that sense of responsibility. I know persons could be in shock, they could be fearful of that bystander, of not knowing what to do or how to do it. But as Mr. Liverpool said, dig deeply, get that sense of responsibility, and do what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's also to add to what everybody just said, it really comes down to our nature of civility. And truth and in fact, there's a lot of complications to the bystander effect, when to act and how to act and if I should act, and there's a whole host of other factors that are in place. So I want to invite everyone to join us tomorrow for our training session, day 1 and day 2, as we, talk more about the bystander effect and how we can really make a difference. Yes, so I'll end by saying educate yourself, know the information, execute, apply the information that you have, yes, and empower. Yes, it only starts with one person to be a catalyst for the rest of us to fall in line. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you all for joining these discussions, and a heartfelt thanks to our esteemed team of panelists for their time, for sharing their experiences and knowledge. I also want to thank the Spotlight Initiative and the Trinidad Youth Council for their support of this project, our mentor, Ashley Burnett, our team members, and everyone who would have joined us today. A heartfelt thank you. I want to remind you of our workshops tomorrow and Wednesday, and you can check the chat for the link to register for our 2-day Bystander Intervention workshop. So thank you, everyone, and please enjoy your night.